Present.
Euro Satia. Chris Picard.
Present.
And I, Council Johnson Poulos, are present as well, and our Secretary Treasurer, Monica Farnholm, is to my right. So there'll be two meetings tonight, one being the Committee of Adjustment and second being Advisory Committee meeting. There'll be two minor variance applications for the committee to consider as part of the Committee of Adjustment. And once the committee adjustment is over, we'll go to the Planning Development Advisory Committee. The one consent for the Advisory Committee to review and provide comments to the county's Land Division Committee, and one zoning bylaw amendment to review and provide comments to council. Please note the meeting is video and audio recorded, and all electronic meetings are uploaded to municipality's YouTube page. By registering to participate in meeting by electronic means or consenting, have their likeness and comments recorded and posted on YouTube. Okay, so let's go into the moment of reflection. Thank you. So, can we have the confirmation of the agenda?
Yeah, that the committee approves the April 14th, 2026 agenda as circulated.
Have a mover? All, second Kim, all in favor? Two. Any disclosure of conflict of interest? No, okay. So consent agenda, Monica, would you please read it?
Yeah, that the Committee of Adjustment approves the minutes from the meeting held on March 10th, 2026 as circulated.
Okay, have a mover? Zero, second by Chris, all in favor? Two. Okay, so now we're gonna move into the hearing part of the meeting. The purpose of these hearings is to inform and provide the public with the opportunity to ask questions or express their views with respect to minor variance application before us today. Township requests you please notify the secretary of the committee by emails at planning@poston.ca if you wish to be on record and would like to be reported at future hearings and decisions regarding a specific application. The format of each hearing is as follows. I will read the application to be heard and ask staff to display the relevant information. Staff will then present the information report, specifically outline the purpose of the application, summarize compliance with township notification and submission requirements, and outlining staff comments. The applicant then present the purpose and details of the application and any further relevant information. Following this, the public can obtain clarification, ask questions, and express their views on the proposal. You have a maximum of 10 minutes to speak. Following this, the members of the committee can obtain clarification, ask questions, and if a member wishes to ask a condition, I'll ask for a vote on the condition. Then the committee will deliberate the application, and with any approved conditions, I'll render a decision, and the decision will be subject to a 20-day appeal period. So we'll start with the first application. It's B13 CHA, Chartron, Vicky and Michelle, 88-90 Gilmore Road, Township of Poston, requesting relief from new comprehensive zoning bylaw 23-2018 as amended from section 4.16.1A to permit a reduced minimum distance separation MDS1 from the barn at 76 Gilmore Road to the separate parcel to be 214 meters instead of 231 meters as required. So Monica, would you please summarize the application, notification, submission requirements, outlining staff, agency, and public comments and recommendations?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, the application was circulated to a 60-meter buffer of neighboring properties. It's also circulated to internal and external commenting agencies, and there are no further comments than what were included in the agenda package.
Okay. Okay, so Monica, would you please have the owner applicant join the panelists?
Yeah, Jeff.
Okay.
Evening.
You state your name and address for the record.
Jeff Buseman, from Guelph. I'm with Van Hurt Surveying, representing the property owner for this application.
Sure, please go ahead.
So this property was, had a approved severance a number of years ago. They did not finish the conditions because of how some of the conditions were set up. So then we had a new severance application. The biggest thing with the new severance application is we changed the configuration just slightly. that severance, that new application was approved by Land Division Committee, subject to conditions. When the first severance was done, there was a minor variance for the MBS to this one barn. If I could, you can see this light dashed line here. That's where it was initially, going to be the property line, but to make it work better, to keep this building and so on, have the driveway, it was more valuable to put the property line this way. Therefore, this MBS here now is a little bit shorter than was approved last time. So like by a few meters. So we're just asking for the variance to be 214 meters. The 231 is what the MBS calculations would be, not the minor variance value of last time. I think it's pretty straightforward. If there's any questions or comments, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, are there any registrants who request to speak?
No, there's not.
Okay, is anybody in the audience who would like to speak to this particular item? Nope. Okay, so, have any written comments from any public item?
No.
Okay, so, let's go through around the table. Oh, questions, comments?
No questions or comments, thank you.
Not for me.
No questions or comments, thanks.
Chris?
Nothing from me,
None as well. So let's go through the formalities. It's either approved, opposed, or deferred. And I'll read out the actual wording in the matter section 45, the Planning Act as amended and new comprehensive zoning bylaw 23-2018 as amended, an application for minor variance requesting relief on new comprehensive zoning bylaw 23-2018 as amended from section 11.3. Am I reading the right one? Okay. To permit a reduced minimum distance separation MDS1 from the barn at 76 Gilmore Road to the separate parcel be 214 meters instead of 231. Okay, Paul? Tim?
Approved.
Carol? Chris? Approved. Approve as well. So the application be subject to a 20-day appeal period.
Thank you.
All right. So we'll read the, we'll go after the recommendation application. Okay, so let's go on to 7.2, D13, CRO, Cross Larry, Part Lot 18, Concession 9, Township Whistler, requesting relief of new comprehensive zoning bylaw 23-118 as amended from section 11.3 table 11.2 to permit a reduced lot frontage of the lands to be severed to be 57 meters instead of 120 meters as required. Okay. Formalities. So, Monica, would you please summarize the application, notification, submission requirements, zoning staff, agency, public comments, and recommendations?
Through you, Mr. Chair, this application was circulated to the 60-meter buffer of neighboring properties, was also circulated to internal and external commenting agencies, and we did not receive any comments outside of what was included in the agenda.
Okay, thank you. So the applicant, please come forward. So you're there, so please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Tony Schmidt, and 107 Westminster Drive North in Cambridge. I am not a planner involved with this. I'm the agent for Larry and Glenna for this process. We have went through the land division. Everything was approved. There was a condition on this. I know there was some discussions between MHPC with the requirement, but I'm here before you with all the information that you already have, and we appreciate all the staff support that's brought us here today.
Or can you please just run through the application for your minor variance?
Yeah, absolutely. The parcel is about 48 acres. There was the approval of the severance, which, as you can see, reduced the frontage. The red lot is what is being severed, and the other part's being retained. I believe the reduction of lot frontage down to the 57. I think it was 57. I originally thought I was here for moral support more so than 57 meters.
Okay, so are there any people in the online who would like to speak people sign it?
No.
Okay, is there anybody in the audience who'd like to speak or ask questions with respect to this item? None? Okay, so let's go into the committee members. Start with you, Paul. Questions, comments?
No questions or comments, thank you.
Okay, Kim.
None for me.
Sure.
No questions or comments. Nothing for me.
I don't have any either. So let's go through the details of the application. And that is section 45 of the Planning Act as amended and new comprehensive zoning bylaw 23-2018. As amended, an application for minor grants requesting relief on new comprehensive zoning bylaw 2018 as amended in section 11.3, table 11.2 to permit a reduced lot frontage of lots to be 57 meters instead of 120 meters as required. Start with you, Paul.
Approve.
Kim.
Approve.
Hero.
Approve.
Chris.
Approve.
Approve as well, and it's subject to a 20-day appeal period.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time this evening. I appreciate it.
No worries.
It's been a long road. We appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, so, any new business? No? Okay, no staff report, chairman made adjustments, so we do the resolution.
Through you, Mr. Chair, can we go back to the resolutions for vote?
Oh, sure, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, resolution 2026-015, that one is for, D13 Chartran. And the resolution is unchanged from what was posted in the agenda.
Okay, so, I'll move and second for that. Move by Chris, second by Carol, all in favor? Okay, go ahead, next one.
The next resolution is for D13 Cross, and that resolution is unchanged from what was posted in the agenda.
Okay, mover, Paul, second Kim, all in favor? Thank you. Okay, so let's go to the chairman's plan.
That the Committee of Adjustment hereby adjourns at 7:23 p.m.
Okay, mover, Paul, second Kim, all in favor? Thank you. Okay, let's move into the, Plan Development Advisory. Hey, good evening, welcome to the, Township Planning and Development Advisory Committee meeting. There'll be one consent, and as noted earlier, there'll be a zoning bylaw amendment to comment on as well. And we'll start with roll call again. Paul Sutter,
Present.
Kim McCarthy,
Present.
Carol Artia,
Present.
Chris Picard,
Present.
and High Council John Spruce, I'm present as well. Started the movement of reflection. Thank you. Again, let's just mention some staff over here. Monica Farnholm, our Secretary Treasurer, to my right. In the audience, we have our Rob Stover, our consultant planner for the zoning bylaw amendment, and our hydrogeologist, Stan Denhoog, as well, for the same item. So could you please read the confirmation agenda?
That the committee approves the April 14th, 2026 PDAC agenda as circulated, and that the committee approve the additions to the agenda as follows. Consent item 6.3, questions received from the committee seeking additional information, and the corresponding responses provided by staff regarding the April 14th, 2026 Planning and Development Advisory Committee meeting agenda.
Okay, so the only thing I'd like to do is, council agrees, is move the land division item right now so that we can keep all the zoning bylaw presentations all together rather than try to split the presentations and then dealing with the report. Do we agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. So can you add that to the resolution? Okay, have a mover. Zero, second, Chris, all in favor? Okay, so let's move into the land division. Are you Jeff again?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so, land division 9.1.1, the 23/6/26, McDonald Mark, part lot 6, east of line 111 Carter Road, Township Wilson's, proposed severance is 1.21 hectares with 13-meter frontage, existing proposed rural residential use, existing shed to be removed. Okay, Jeff, all yours.
This is a proposal for severance for on Purdon Road. As you can see, it's gonna be a flag-shaped lot. Looking at about 13 meters in front. This driveway is gonna be rerouted and go through, some of these trees and go way into this side, because it's a side entry garage. This is plenty of room here to get it into the back. We do need to get, a minor variance eventually for the MDS to the barn for this one. But otherwise, everything's pretty straightforward. Meets all the requirements for the policies. Secondary ag, safe entrance, those kinds of things have all been addressed.
Okay, thank you. Start with questions, call questions.
I don't have any questions for Jeff on this.
Okay, Kim?
My only question is the existing septic tank, how far is it from, what's the setback from the property now?
So we're gonna make sure that this is the minimum is 3 meters right here. We're gonna make sure that that happens.
Okay.
Yeah.
But what's it exist, like,
I don't know exactly where it is. It's something we are going to determine exactly to make sure we get that right.
Sounds good.
Yeah, good question.
So we can put that as one of the conditions as well. Anything else, please?
No, that was my only question, thank you.
Nothing more from me, thank you. Okay, so, I don't have any questions, but I'm gonna suggest that we add a couple of comments. One is, crystallize the fact that we want that driveway off the severed parcel and entirely in the retained parcel. The other comment I'm gonna suggest we make is also that the fire department has not reviewed this, and I'd like them to review it as well. I'm more concerned about the grades going up from the road to the severed parcel. So, I'm gonna suggest we put a condition on that. And then Carol mentioned the, issue associated with the, septic tank, and, we can put a condition in there that the, words affect that the, septic bed be, at least, 3 meters away from the property, proposed property. So can you read those last three? Otherwise, everything's the same except for the last three.
Okay, and through you, Mr. Chair, we also had, another condition added about the railway.
Sure.
So that condition would be that the owner shall be required to sign an affidavit stating that they will insert a warning clause in the agreement of purchase of sale for the severed lands regarding the Guelph Junction Railway located near the property, advising any potential purchaser of the 24-hour and weekend railway operations. No whistle cessation is in place, possible early morning maintenance and capital projects occurring pending freight train schedule. Number 6, that the driveway for the retained parcel be relocated from the severed parcel. Number 7, that the driveway on the severed parcel be reviewed to the satisfaction of the township's fire department. And number 8, through you, Mr. Chair, I made a change here, just if you comment that a review of the septic location be done by the chief building official to the satisfaction of the township.
That's fair enough. For you, Carol?
Yeah,
That's fair.
that's-
Okay.
thanks.
Any other comments or questions? No? Okay, have a mover and a seconder. Moved by Carol, seconded by Chris. All in favor? Great, thank you. Thank you very much. All right. All right, so let's move into, the main body. We'll start with, delegations. So do you want to read that?
So we will have a delegation by CBM regarding D14 CBM Aberfoyle South Lake Pit at 6947 concession 2.
Okay, let's step forward.
Good evening, Karis Poulos, members of the committee. My name is Neil DeRuyter. I'm a planner with MHBC Planning. Here with me tonight is Andrian Samard from CBM. We also have in the back of the room members of our project team, including our project ecologist and hydrogeologist. We put together a really brief presentation to provide an update on the status of the zoning bylaw amendment application. This is a project that's known as the Aberfoyle South Lake Pit that we've been working on for several years. So we're gonna highlight some of the work that's been undertaken, some of the changes that have been made in response to comments that we've received on the application, and then overall where we are in the status of this project. Next slide, please. Slide 2. Okay, thank you. So this application was submitted in late 2023. In conjunction with the zoning bylaw amendment before the township, there's also an official plan amendment application in front of the county. Then there's also an aggregate license application for Ministry of Natural Resources. So all those applications and studies that went along with it were submitted at the same time. The site itself, which is highlighted in red, is on the south side of Concession Road 2. It's about 2 kilometers west of what we call the existing CBM McNally pit. The red dotted line that's shown on Concession Road 2 is the haul route for this pit. So essentially what's going to happen at this pit is materials extracted from the site, be hauled on Concession 2 to the pit at McNally, the McNally pit for processing and further shipment off-site. So that dotted red line is the fixed haul route. Trucks would go back and forth, pick up, offload at McNally and come back. There's about 5.5 million tons of high quality sand and gravel. Based on CBM's estimates, they expect that the pit would be operated in the area of 6 to 10 years. As part of a rehabilitation plan, and this is probably a good time to go to that next slide, Monica, there's a few key landforms, the biggest one being a pond that's going to be created. So the area in blue, that's about 26 hectares in size. Within the setbacks from adjacent features, it's primarily going to be comprised of tree planting that's just under 7 hectares in size. And then there's about 0.8 hectares of new wetlands being created. One of the key things that it reminds me when I'm looking at this slide, the extraction limit is set back 30 meters from all adjacent significant natural features. Mill Creek is located in close proximity to the site. All the areas surrounding that you see that are wooded there are identified as provincially significant wetland. That has been sort of a key mandate going into this project about assessing what those impacts would be on those features. And the 30-meter setback is sort of one of the mitigation measures that have been employed to ensure that there's no negative impacts on those features. Next slide, please. This, I'll qualify that this is a rendering. This is intended to take what we show on our site plans, which can sometimes be very difficult to understand, and show what this would look like upon completion of final rehabilitation. So certainly it's a rendering, not intended to say this is exactly what it looks like, but we try to, and certainly this is something we will use for the public meeting at the end of May to help explain to the public what this is intended to look like. Next slide, please. With respect to the zoning bylaw amendment, the application proposes to rezone lands in the agriculture and natural environment zone to extractive industrial. And then there's going to be a special natural environment zoning with site-specific zoning within those 30-meter setbacks. One of the things that's important to note with respect to the zoning in the existing natural environment zone, the majority of the site is within a floodplain. As a result of that, the natural environment zone has been applied. It's also similarly in the county official plan. That's why the Greenlands designation has been applied. Next slide, please. Quick summary of the timeline. As I mentioned at the beginning, the applications were submitted late 2023. In spring 2024, the township gave us a detailed set of comments. There was a big chunk of time, what I would say, while CBM and the project team was working on additional investigations and responses to the comments received. So that took place roughly between summer and fall 2025. Between November 2025 and January of this year, there's been responses that have gone out to agencies, including the township, county, as well as residents in response to comments that have been received. In February, the township and the county both deemed the Planning Act applications complete, thus allowing them to proceed with circulation and scheduling a public meeting. I should note that's what's not on here on the timeline. In March, we came to the close of our Aggregate Resource Act consultation process. So essentially within 2 years of starting that, we have to report back to all members of the public and agencies that gave us comments on the application. And what we do is we essentially issue objection forms to determine who has a remaining objection to the pit application. So I've got a slide just to highlight the results of that work and what's come out of that. Next slide, please. Just wanted to highlight a few of the pieces that have been undertaken in response to the comments received. Without going into detail onto each item, what I would say is a key area of common concern that we received specifically was impacts on natural environment, specifically Mill Creek, significant wetlands, the relationship between water and natural environment, how the pit operation and rehabilitation interplays with that. So a lot of the work that was undertaken was through the firm WSP and looking at additional assessment and mitigation with respect to the impacts on Mill Creek, the tributaries associated with Mill Creek and the significant wetlands. As part of that work, a monitoring plan has been prepared. Essentially, the document is intended to help address and anticipate potential impacts, how those would be remedied and mitigated. Next slide, please. A couple of the key changes to the application. At the very beginning, this was called Aberfoyle Pit. Aberfoyle South Pit expansion. That caused a lot of confusion, and we totally understood, and CBM appreciated that confusion. So that's why it's been renamed the South Lake Pit. It is still a new license application. It still requires a rezoning. It doesn't change any of those requirements, but certainly the name to clear up that confusion. I mentioned the monitoring plan. There's also been additional mitigation measures that have been put in as a result of the additional work. There's additional groundwater and surface water monitoring. Because, I think what we would say with respect to the work that's been undertaken, there's no doubt there's a complex natural environment at play here. And what we're trying to do is ensure that the work that's been undertaken reflects that, respects that, and then finds a way to ensure that while the pit's operating, while it's being rehabilitated, that there are no impacts on those important features. A few of the other areas that have been added to are there's been additional restrictions on operating equipment from a noise perspective within the pit, and then there's also specific targets for rehabilitation. So when I showed that slide, the tree areas, the wetland, how are they created, how many trees are planted, all of those have been, those details have been incorporated on the site plan. Next slide, please. So with respect to the aggregate resource license application, we just wanted to note the agencies that have been involved in reviewing this application. So it includes Ministry of Natural Resources, Ministry of Environment through groundwater, surface water, and species at risk has also reviewed it. Also Ministry of Agriculture, Grand River Conservation Authority. We've also been involved with Fisheries and Oceans Canada, or DFO, as it relates to potential impacts on fish habitat. And then with respect to the municipalities, the county and the township. The thing I wanted to note, through the consultation process and through the changes made to the application, we have received several agency sign-offs. So that includes Ministry of Environment. So from groundwater, surface water, and species at risk perspective, Hydro One has signed off, Ministry of Agriculture, and Department of Fisheries and Oceans Canada. I want to qualify a statement here because we've included GRCA. GRCA has indicated that they're not objecting to the pit application, but they have provided comments to the township and the county on the related planning applications. So we have responded to those comments. We are hopeful that we will be able to address those, but it was an important qualification with respect to that statement on that slide. With respect to the comments that we've received from the township, which there's a number of peer review comments and additional matters that have been identified. I would note that several areas appear to have been resolved to peer reviewer satisfaction, but there still are outstanding matters. We are currently in the process of working through and reviewing those comments and responding to the township peer reviewers. Next slide, please. With respect to public consultation, when we circulated the Aggregate Resource Act license application, we received 18 written comments from members of the public. What happens when we receive a written comment from a member of the public, we're then required to attempt to address those comments. So through this process, we've responded to each of those comments. CBM has set up a project website which sort of contained all this information and the summaries. I should say there's a lot of information and a lot of technical information with this. We've tried to utilize the site plan to summarize sort of the key items related to the application. With respect to the objection forms that I mentioned, that we issued to all remaining commenters in March, from 18, we went down to 2. I do want to again qualify this statement though as one of those objections is an organization that does represent, I believe there was 10 people who signed on to it. But those are with respect to the members of the public, those are who we have left with respect to the Aggregate Resource Act license application. What happens under that process is any outstanding objections, so that would include the township remaining objections as well as the members of the public. What we expect the ministry to do is to refer it to a hearing to the Ontario Land Tribunal. And essentially then the matters that are left outstanding would then be dealt with at a hearing. CBM is still committed to working through and responding to as many as the comments as possible. With where we're at with the planning applications, and because a decision has not been made on those planning applications, it still allows us time to work through and try to address. There's nothing stopping CBM from still responding to the members of the public, certainly working through the township and their remaining comments. Next slide, please. We just wanted to highlight the additional changes that have been made as a result of the more recent comments. And this is as a result of the comments that we received in March. So a few of the items to highlight. The first one is the license boundary, which is essentially the perimeter of the pit boundary has been reduced. And Monica, if I ask, could you just go to slide 2? Because I just want to show, I should have included a map because I realize our description here may not be helpful. If I can just point on the screen to show you where it is. So this area right here along Concession Road 2, where the existing on-site house is, this was always supposed to be included in the license, but there was going to be no aggregate extraction there. Certainly a lot of questions about why that was decided. We've taken a further look at it, and the license boundary will get pulled back to closely where the extraction limit is. So that means no portion of this area, the farm field along Concession Road 2, would be included in the license. It's also it was already removed from the zoning bylaw amendment, the official plan amendment. So this just cleans it up so everything aligns together. The other big change that's currently being worked on is establishing groundwater and surface water trigger levels. Certainly the folks at WSP can do a better job explaining the technical side of this, but essentially what it's intended to do based on the extensive monitoring network in place is to establish what level certain triggers would be met. What that means is if a trigger is met, either it's further assessment undertaken, if they're still seeing levels that are not, if they're still triggering an action, there are then certain additional things that may have to occur, and that includes reducing below water extraction or reducing extraction as a result of those levels. So those are trigger levels that will then be included on the site plan. And so that's sort of a key one, I would say, with respect to the township comments that we're seeing with respect to the remaining items related to natural environment and water. The other aspects that are going to be included is providing more specific definitions on a maximum disturbed area. This is in part with progressive rehabilitation plans and ensuring that that rehabilitation plan I showed is occurring in a progressive manner. And then there's going to be additional monitoring requirements for noise mitigation on site. And then there's additional sediment and erosion fencing control measures, which have been worked out through GRCA with respect to the details that they would like to see on the site plan. Next slide. So just to highlight next steps, the township is proceeding with the formal review and public consultation. We understand that the application will be circulated or has been circulated to municipal departments, peer reviewers, and the public. There is a tentative public meeting scheduled at the end of May. Certainly, we look forward to continuing to work through that process. I expect that we will still hear things at the public meeting as well. And, we look forward to hearing any additional comments or concerns that remain out there. And certainly you just wanted to highlight that, we remain committed to working with the township, as well as the county and the other agencies on addressing those comments. So I apologize. I tried to summarize here 4 years of work for you guys in 10 minutes, and I apologize. I probably went through it really quickly. I understand Mr. McNeil also has a presentation. I didn't want to take away from his time as well. But certainly if the committee has any questions, be happy to answer. certainly.
The way I'd like to have the process is we'll have Mr. McNee do his presentation, so I see the
Sure.
other side. And then you can come back and then we'll turn it over to committee members to ask questions of you, of our planning staff, in the audience as well, and, I would you always.
Thank you.
All right. Good, John, you're on.
We're leaving for you.
Exactly. Mr. Chair, good evening, committee members. Thank you for the time to delegate on behalf of our Mill Creek Stewards Association. I also had intended to do I should say, John McNee concession 26927.
Good thing.
Thanks. I also intended, like Mr. DeRuyter, to do a multi-slide presentation. But then I thought, this question is really simple. It deserves a simple answer. And that deserves a simple delegation. So I decided just to go with this handout, which Mr. DeRuyter has also shown to you and is part of the, this was also part of Mr. DeRuyter's presentation. And there's two extras. As I say, simple question before planning committee, and that is, does this application meet good land plan? And certainly, looking at the township zoning bylaw and the county's official plan with respect to good land planning, they summarize it as below water table aggregate mining to be allowed requires two things. One is that there be significant aggregate resources below the water table, and two, that any impacts to the environment, including ground and surface water resources, be minimal. Given those two conditions and looking at these two illustrations, certainly our Mill Creek Association has to admire the audacity of this application with respect to those considerations, both with respect to aggregate resources and potential impacts to the environment. With respect to potential impacts on the environment, this application proposes 70 acres of extraction, shoehorned into the middle of almost 1,800 acres of Mill Creek wetland complex. A complex that is critical to our community's drinking water, its filtration, storage, flood control, carbon sequestration with respect to climate change, and literally thousands of species ecosystems from insects to mammals. It's shoehorning 70 acres of extraction surrounded by cold water fish habitats in the form of the Mill Creek and tributaries, which are increasingly rare in southern Ontario. It's encircled, as Mr. DeRuyter mentioned, by environmentally sensitive forests, in fact, the largest contiguous tract in Wellington County. It's classified 100% as floodplain, but speaks for itself. It's best 100% as prime farmland at a time of increasing food insecurity. It's evaluated as 0% mineral aggregate overlay. It's defined 100% as core Greenland and Greenland under the official plan, and judged 100% as natural environment zone under township bylaws. With respect to aggregate resources, and this is critical, it proposes an amount of aggregate per acre of land destroyed that is half or less than half the amount of aggregate per acre of land destroyed from CBM sites further up concession 2, which are under the mineral aggregate overlay. If I review that, what I'm saying is twice as much land destroyed for the same amount of aggregate produced, and these are CBM's calculations. Based on our group's calculations, which recognize that this amount of aggregate appears significantly contaminated with silt clay, there would be even more land destroyed for the same amount of aggregate produced further up the road in the mineral aggregate overlay. And at the same time, this pit would be producing a significant amount of silt, which has to be disposed of, and that is already a problem for CBM with its existing pits. Also, an amount of aggregate that the applicant has never bothered to quality test, despite weekly opportunities with its other pits where they're sending in quality testing on a regular basis. Let's look at a few specific examples of the environmental impacts. Township consultants have defined problems, including unaddressed significant water and other natural environment impacts beyond the report's addressed 120-meter limit. They define blockage of all groundwater flow to the Mill Creek over a 900-meter stretch. Unclear qualifications
for classification of previously unclassified wetlands within the excavation limits. Unaddressed flooding on neighboring properties. Permanent changes to both the Mill Creek brook trout and brown trout ecosystems. Unaddressed weaknesses in modeling and surveys of other species populations. Unaddressed decreases in the water table, impacting provincially significant wetlands in multiple directions around this abstraction area. The existence of artesian groundwater upflow in 2 sites bracketing the excavation area with significant potential for more within the excavation site. Significant changes to flow in Tributary 3. Inconsistent operation plans and lack of clarity regarding silt waste deposition, and the list goes on. So certainly to the Mill Creek stewards, this seemed pretty simple. Limited aggregate resources, clear and obvious adverse impacts to the environment, including water, contrary to zoning bylaw, contrary to official plan criteria, case closed, except something called net impact. The applicant proposes, and has proposed with other applications, that modeling, mitigation, and conditions will somehow turn clear evidence of significant adverse environmental impact into minimal net impact on the environment. I won't go into detail on that, but I will note that an Ontario Land Tribunal referred to this approach at best as hope. And at least in the tribunal situation, they stated a case, and I say the case for not abrogating responsibilities for judging applications in the present by relying on that hope as expressed in an applicant's future assurances, whether they're modeling, mitigation, or conditions, essentially passing on the judging responsibility of an application to another body. With that in mind, though, let's look at some specific examples of this applicant's hopeful modeling, mitigation, and conditions with respect to those environmental impacts.
Excuse me, John, give me 5 more minutes.
Yep, you got it. We're well over halfway through. A supplementary wetland report using apparently inappropriate modeling that incorporates a zone 4 wetland that includes groundwater that runs away from an immediately adjacent water course and through elevated land to another water course. A supplementary site plan operation that begins with phase 1 mining of above water table aggregate, where there appears to be no aggregate above the water table. A supplementary groundwater report with unvalidated mitigation processes that incorporate drain tile over a length of 350 meters with an elevation drop that engineers say would not drain. An initial agricultural impact report that uses inappropriate prime farm area modeling to dismiss the importance of prime farm land that makes up 100% of the excavation area. A supplementary water balance reports unvalidated mitigation process that supposedly minimizes the impact of base flow changes to the Mill Creek by redirecting altered groundwater flow into a tributary that enters into the Mill Creek further downstream. Unfortunately, that process leaves a 1,600 meter stretch of the Mill Creek with significantly and permanently reduced groundwater flow, and that 900 meter stretch I mentioned earlier with no groundwater input upstream of that supposedly mitigated tributary. A noise and visual impact model that inappropriately uses private property and residential setbacks to meet minimal noise thresholds and visual impact standards. And talking of conditions, a supplementary monitoring report that incorporates apparently irrelevant conditions to protect the cold water fish habitat of this Mill Creek. Those conditions define the brown trout as the most sensitive impact receptor in the creek, despite the Mill Creek's brook trout being significantly more sensitive. Those conditions utilize a temperature threshold trigger, much like Neil had mentioned, that is so high it verges on lethal to brook trout and significantly compromising to brown trout. Those conditions utilize a monitoring frequency of every 3 months that would potentially leave that cold water habitat disastrously warm for the same period, and a subsequent discussion, followed by discussion, and finally action protocol that would extend that disastrous warm period by many more months, if not permanently. The supplementary water report proposing apparently inadequate license conditions to protect against cumulative adverse impacts from multiple aggregate pits in the area, rather than the pre-approval study of cumulative impacts felt necessary and requested by both of the township's consultants in hydrogeology and natural environment. Finally, a point, the Mill Creek stewards believe encapsulates the land planning aspect of this application. Just a few months ago, Mr. DeRider presented to the council on another pit, Safari Pit. And when he was commenting on that pit, he pointed out an extremely important and what he called a key point that's on the bottom of this slide. That none of that Safari Pit excavation area involved the natural environment zone. I point out that 100% of this excavation area incorporates the natural environment zone. So I think that statement speaks for itself. In summary, we have a below water table application before the planning committee that proposes limited availability of aggregate resources relative to land destroyed and significant adverse effects to the environment despite modeling mitigation conditions. Both clearly contrary to the township zoning bylaw and the county's official plan. Mill Creek stewards believe that with respect to good planning, this application does not begin to justify approval. Thanks for your time.
Can you leave us or send a copy of the presentation to?
It is in the mail, Monica.
Is it? Okay, great, thank you.
Only because it was put together so late, I would have had it to you.
Very much. So let's get Neil and Andrea Ann back here. And then we'll start going around the questions of the applicant. We got to the next, we have Rob Stovall, our planner in the audience. Will ask if you want to ask questions of them, please feel free. And we have Stan Dagehog, he's our hydrogeologist. So if you have questions specifically those two elements, please feel free. Okay, so over to you.
So I'll start it off. Just if you can go to this slide, Monica. I just have a simple question, actually, really, just to understand natural environment, agriculture, zoning. And so I guess the question is, based on this image, like where is the natural environment zone, and then where is the extraction going to happen? Simple.
Just gonna, if you don't mind, I'm just gonna go up so it'll be easier.
Yeah, that's why, yeah.
To point to this. Agriculture is the blue,
Mhm.
the natural environment's the remainder.
Okay.
So, and with respect to where extraction is proposed, is sort of the area within the red and the blue.
Okay.
I want to point out, so the natural environment zone, typically the natural environment zone reflects significant natural features, right? So Mill Creek, the PSW. The township zoning bylaw includes floodplains in the natural environment zone, right? So when we go to the other figure, you'll see that the extraction area is limited to the farmland. So I just want to point that out with respect to where it is relative to other features in the natural environment zone.
Okay, but we're extracting out of the NE zone.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm good for now.
Okay.
I guess just a few questions, and I apologize, I don't know mining. So the property or the area is a 6 to 10 year program, we'll call it. How does that look over the years? Does the mining all happen at once? Like what does that timing look like in terms of having a pond, and how are these trucks coming in and out of the property to then take it to the other site? What's that look like?
So yeah, it's a good question. So the 6 to 10 years, is an estimate, right? We always qualify it based on economic conditions, right? Aggregate demand is higher when the economy is doing better, and the reverse can be true as well. It would be operated like the 6 to 10. It wouldn't be like, okay, there's 3 years in this decade, 3 years in that decade. It would be 6 to 10 concurrently. Right, so there is a need for this material at their plant within the McNally pit to process additional aggregate. So the 6 to 10 would be sort of consecutive years. Right?
Okay.
And as extraction's occurring, and essentially because the water table is so high on this site, the pit pond will be created quite early in the process. Mr. McNee, rightfully pointed out, there's not a lot of material above the water table at this site. So essentially about 5% of the aggregate that's on the site is above the water table. So what that means is as CBM's extracting, and there's, 4 phases of the pit development, that pit pond will be created quite early in the process.
Okay.
And then so the way in which they're extracted and brought out to that other site, like that truck will be it'll be the same through that 6 to 10 years of that lifespan of the operation. And I would say, that 6 to 10 is the best estimate, that's based upon CBM's, projected needs with respect to it, but, based upon the demand for materials here, which is quite high, that would be anticipated, lifespan.
Okay, so the,
Just to add to that,
Yeah.
the phases that Neil was speaking to are documented on our website, and we'll be prepared to discuss that at the public meeting.
Okay.
That's coming up.
okay, so the final kind of photo, if you will, of the pond, that's after it's totally complete, not kind of the duration of. What does it look like while you're extracting? Like, what is there berms? Is there, what does that look like in terms of protection, noise control, dust control?
Yeah, so there's a document we have on the site plan. So, and there's a couple key things, the operations plan and the rehabilitation plan. So the operation plan sets out that phasing that I mentioned, but then it also identifies how the pit is screened. So the pit does have to be screened from public view and from neighboring properties. So there will be berms in place. Where the extraction area is closest to the township road, it's quite flat. Right, so the way that the noise is mitigated and the visual is by the construction of berms. And so where extraction will start out is pretty much at the furthest end that you see there, starting in the middle of the furthest end, and then it works its way back to the corner closest in this screen, getting towards the pit entrance. But yeah, on the site plan, it lays out, where the berms, where the tree screens that are proposed, and then what are the details for when those berms have to go up, relative to the phase of the pit operation.
Okay. One last question, and just regarding like your current ponds, if you will, are all kind of within the 25 south and 20 south boundaries. We're now expanding past the 20 south road. So now obviously I believe it's a dirt road.
25 is, yes.
So, and concession road too, I don't know if that's a dirt road as well. How much traffic on a daily basis is going to be going back and forth? And is that going to be major, road concerns and traffic concerns and whatnot?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So the traffic study determined that there would be 28 trips per hour worst case. So that's when the pit's operating at its highest level, right? The most amount of aggregate that's being extracted and shipped. So it's a 2-kilometer stretch from the entrance of the site to the existing pit. The majority of that stretch has already been built for truck traffic. As you noted, there are the other pits along that stretch. You can see from the air photos. But there is a stretch of that road that was not built for heavy truck traffic. So as part of this process and what CBM has agreed, as a result of comments from the township, is for further geotechnical work, both for the road structure, but then also there's the Mill Creek culvert, right, the Mill Creek Bridge there, to assess the structural stability of that and how trucks would then impact that, and then what improvements would be necessary. And as part of this, we anticipate, and discussions have been occurring with the township about the use of what's called a development agreement or haul route agreement that would then contemplate that work, how it's undertaken, and then how CBM is then is responsible then for undertaking those improvements.
Could I just add something?
No, that's strictly us asking you questions.
Okay, I wasn't sure. that it
No,
was
no,
addressed
I
again,
think that's
so I wasn't
only
sure.
questions of the proponent or staff. That's it for you, John.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Okay.
The other pits that are located north and south of the highway, like this property, what was their proposed life cycle at the time for rehab?
That's a good question. I mean, there's been different stages at which those have been approved. Monica, if you go to the second slide, just so some of those pits have been licensed a lot longer than others. What I would just say, with respect to some of the more recent pit applications, so CBM has this is the PQA pit, Nybauer pit, the Lancey pit. Lancey, just to give you an example, was licensed around 2010. The majority of it's been rehabilitated except the strip of land right here. That's the land that's gonna gain access to the expansion, the Lansing Pit expansion. So, some of these sites with respect to extraction, with respect to CBM sites, have progressed, I think, within a 10-year timeframe. What I would say for McNally Pit, and certainly appreciate that the township has questions with respect to the use of the processing plant there. The majority of McNally has been under rehabilitation, but this plant will continue to serve, essentially as the processing area for this site. So this area would remain disturbed in an area where they'd be making the aggregate, processing it, and sending out by trucks for shipment.
Okay, that was my follow-up question. I presume their life cycle ended before this one, so I was gonna ask where you were gonna process the aggregates.
Right,
afterwards.
right.
Those are all my questions. Thank you.
The township's letter of March 16th is an awful lot, it's an objection letter. There's an awful lot of outstanding questions. I was rather hoping you would be dealing with some of those tonight. And I think they echo Mr. McNee's comments, but there's just an enormous amount of uncertainty around the impacts of the operations of the grid clauses. Anything you want to say about that?
Yeah, and certainly we had a, 2-hour discussion on going through the comments. I mean, I anticipate that will be certainly an item that we'll want to go through at the public meeting, right, with respect to what remains outstanding. Our CBM and our team, we've gone through it. I would say the volume is lengthy with respect to the content that's there. I would take note of there are, multiple instances where things have been addressed, right? And that there are additional clarifications and questions, but there do remain certain areas with respect to, I would say specifically the water assessment and the natural environment and the mitigation related to that, where from the peer reviews, there are questions. I really want to highlight the fact of, we're working with a lot of review agencies, in this case, the township being one, and out of respect, certainly the township holding the zoning, plays a key role in that. I don't want to understate that. But we also have a lot of other experts from the other ministries and the other reviewers that I've talked about that have reviewed this. Some have arrived at different conclusions than the township peer reviewers. What our job right now is to take back all that information and figure out, okay, from the plan that we put forward and the work that we've done with these agencies, how else can we respond? How else can we address these comments? Like our goal here is to address what we're able to. I would say though, as a planner working, on many aggregate files, it's not always possible that you get a resolution with a peer reviewer. There are oftentimes professional areas of disagreement, and that's fine. That's what this process is for. But certainly we want to work towards resolving as much as we're able to. And I think, I think when in our sort of perspective and view, that's where we want to head, and that's where we hope to get with respect to a lot of those remaining items.
Okay, thank you. I'll let the chair stop me if this isn't an appropriate planning question, but in the press, and certainly the Auditor General talks about compliance of aggregate extraction with agreements, we'll call them. And I know it's been a concern of the township. What would lead us to think if the future will be any different for better compliance?
Well, maybe I can let Andrew jump in on it, but
From a compliance perspective, I can tell you CBM is 100% focused on remaining compliant. It's our number one priority. I know that there may be some opposing opinion, difference of opinion, but I can assure you that we are heavily regulated, and we take compliance as it's a must. It's not a question for us. And I don't know if you want to add more to that.
yeah, and I think like the township, and the chair would be aware, right, that there's been several things that have been identified with respect to CBM sites within this immediate area and elsewhere within the township. And I think what CBM's indicated that they're open to discussing that further with the township to find ways of addressing those and working with M&R. the thing for the township, and, you know, the fact is, for aggregate licenses, they are still regulated by the ministry, right? So as a township, you know, it does put it in a bit of a difficult spot considering other things that, you know, would be otherwise subject to bylaw, but not to, you know, take away into what Andrew Young was saying is that, you know, there's a commitment, it's known, right? And this is, you know, certainly it's come out through, this application as well, right, with respect to those compliance matters. So the hope is, and I would note, you know, for this committee that who may not be aware, you know, as a result of the last application, there were separate agreements executed with the township about things like truck traffic, types of equipment used on municipal roads, road cleanup that CBM has been following, right? So there have been avenues too that have been explored with respect to those items of working with the township directly.
Very
It's not something I'm, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, we are committed to working with the township and the residents. I'm a resident of Portage myself. I would never, put mining on the line out there. On compliance. It's a must for a company, and I wish I could express it more, but it is, very true. We do a lot. I mean, I think Neil talked about all of the work that we've done through the peer reviews, and we're addressing, the concerns coming up. But it is a scientific, evaluation also, so there are different scientific opinions out there. So we're doing our best on that.
I do understand, give us a professional opinion. But the length of township concerns from the CEO's letter left me surprised with that way. I said, wow, there's a lot left to be solved here, and respect the professional difference of opinion. And hearing some of the comments again from Mr. McNee, it seems to me it's got a long ways to go. To get to a point where I can serve a lot of resources. Thank you.
Okay, so I have questions from our planner, Rob. Rob, with respect to the quality of the aggregate, are you satisfied with the response that they provided in their reports?
So, my role as a planner, kind of like,
That's all.
yeah, I was gonna say quarterback, but it works for that. But, yeah, so we take into, consideration all the input from our team, academia, township reviewers, and also from staff. Staff's been excellent. So we take into consideration all that, and certainly the comments related to aggregate quality and quantity were noted. And I think that the town's team is looking back, looking through that. So we'll probably have more comments in the future. But am I satisfied with it? Historically, this entire area has been top-notch material for concrete, stone, and sand. It's premium for that. The concern is the amount of silt, and there was some documentation within the geological component of the evaluation that raised eyebrows, raised concern amongst the team. So I don't have any specific issues on it, but we did take that into consideration.
I have a question for Stan. With respect to the silt going to the other site, have any comments on that?
Yeah, for sure. We, as Neil stated, we did go through a protracted OLT hearing and had to come up with a resolution through that OLT hearing to deal with the non-compliance by CBM and discharging silt into an area which was not identified on the site plans as being allowed to have silt deposition on it. And so that got resolved, or that area got resolved. And now we're looking at Seperic, we're looking at Nybauer, we're looking at possibly more from PQA if they take out the barrier between Nybauer and PQA. And also this site, all of that silt material coming back into McNally pit which is already full. Like, so we went through this thing 2 years ago to address and to have additional silt placed into a very specific area. And that was agreed to, and that area is now full. So we definitely have a question to CBM, and we haven't seen the resolution of that yet, as to what next. And so are we gonna get a new site plan amendment for McNally to address the additional silt deposition? So there is definitely concern about where is that silt gonna go.
Next question, with respect to that section of road from the proposed entrance to the proposed pit over across the culvert, that section of roadway, can you comment on the characterization of the soil under that roadway and what do you think is the issue there?
Oh, I'm sorry, no, I can't.
Can't, okay.
I've not looked at, yeah, I'm not a geotechnical engineer, so I have not taken a look at
Okay,
the
fair enough.
stability of the road or anything.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, all right, so that's all I've got. We don't have any specific questions for you, so I think that's up to us to formulate some recommendations for council. So we're all done with each gentleman.
Thank you.
Okay, so I got some wording I'd like to suggest. The ecological, environmental, hydrological, and hydrology issues raised by the township consultant must be adequately addressed. Okay, the comment on the quality of the aggregate. I've read through, we heard John McNee's comment. I think I'd like to also say the quality of the aggregate must be determined by technical means and not by visual assessment to justify the project. In other words, we've got to make sure the quality's there before you want to think in all the environmental concerns and all that sort of thing to justify in other words, the two balance out by there's enough aggregate of high quality that justifies all the things that's going to happen to this piece of property. The again, the other comment I'd like to suggest we make is a destination pit for the processing should address in detail the specifically with respect to deposition of silt. The big issue there is everything's going there, and what's going to happen on that site? That's not clear. Has to be worked out. So I've got these three suggested comments. Anybody else has any comments to make or any suggestions to make? Start with you, Paul.
I think it's more comments. So from my vantage point here, like, I don't support digging up a natural environment support in zone, period. So I'll just keep my comments.
Oh, that's fine.
So that's my comment.
We can discuss that. That's it. Any comments on what he's suggested?
I personally agree with Paul. I would not support it. I think it's Chris brought up a great point with the history of non-compliance. There's 2 pages of like bullet points of non-compliant item, and I wasn't 100% satisfied with the answer as to what they're doing about the non-compliance on the other sites. And I think the history, maybe speaks for what might happen at another site. So I personally would also not, I would suggest to not support this application.
Anything else, Paul?
No.
Tim,
Nothing further to add, really.
any comments to make on Paul's and Carol's comments?
I'm in agreement.
Over to you, Carol. Anything else?
No, that's pretty much my only comments.
Okay,
As I said in my comments to CBM, I thought the CAO's letter very nicely covered an awful lot of territory, including the comments you've just raised. And I would suggest that we endorse those concerns as very legitimate concerns within the township.
Okay, so I would like to somehow include their comments as well as the comments. So The overriding concern would be that, the committee does not support, what's the word you want to use? This application,
So-
the natural environment zone.
Yeah, and I'm on the record, so I'll put it on the record as well. If you're gonna cut 3 trees on a half an acre natural environment zone in this township right now, you're gonna get in trouble. Okay? That's a fact. And so we're about to dig up acres of natural environment here. So I'm very simple. I've looked at the letter, I looked at all that, but I'm not gonna even get into that. Like, that's my stance on this. So to answer your question, Mr. Chair, is that should not support converting natural environment zone into an extractive industrial zone.
So, let's see how we can phrase that. The committee in principle does not support,
Due to environmental, sorry,
does not support this application, being in a natural environmental zone.
yeah, and then there's supporting documentation, the CO's letter and all that, based on the environmental impacts and the water, flood, all that kind of stuff relates into this.
Okay, and then we can follow up and say as well, there are ecological, environmental, hydrology, concerns that, have not been addressed. Okay, then the quality of the aggregate has not been determined to justify the project. And then the suitability of the destination pit, for processing and, respect that deposition of silt has not been adequately addressed. Okay, so, Monica, I'm gonna give you a chance to read all that good stuff.
There might be some edits.
Maybe delete the 2 trees.
That the committee provide the following comments for council's consideration. That the committee, requests that the ecological, environmental,
Well, let's start with the first one, what causes an override, the
Okay.
first one.
So moving down to that one, I had the Planning and Development Advisory Committee does not support this application being in a natural environment zone. And I added in, want to endorse the ecological, environmental, and hydrogeological concerns that have yet to be addressed in the CAO's letter dated March 16th, 2026.
Okay, so can you reread the whole thing again?
The Planning and Development Advisory Committee does not support this application being in a natural environment zone and want to endorse the ecological, environmental, and hydrogeological concerns that have yet to be addressed in the CAO's letter dated March 16th, 2026.
Okay.
Feel free to rewrite that.
Okay, keep going.
And then we have the destination pit for the processing should address the details on the deposition of silt,
Disposition of silt.
disposition of silt.
Okay, and then we have the quality.
Quality of aggregate must be determined by technical means and you had a second.
And not visual assessment to justify the project.
Quality of aggregate must be determined by technical means and
And not,
not by visual assessment to justify the project.
anything else? Anybody else? Okay, a mover. Paul, second. Kim, all in favor? Thank you. All right, so let's wrap up the agenda now.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we need to get back to a couple of resolutions.
Sure.
That the delegation by CBM regarding D14 CBM Aberfoyle South Lake Pit 6947 Expression 2 Township of Whistling should be received for information.
Okay, mover. Second, Paul, in favor?
That the delegation by John McNee regarding D14 CBM Aberfoyle South Lake Pit Township of Whistling should be received for information.
Mover, Kiro, second, first, all in favor? All right.
We also had that the Planning and Development Advisory Committee approves the minutes from the meeting held on March 10th, 2026, and acknowledges receipt of consent item 6.2, 2025 Council Committee Year in Review, as well as the questions received from committee and staff responses.
Okay, mover. Kim, second, Zero. All in favor?
And there's no new business or staff reports, and that brings us to our adjournment.
Good, Grant.
That the Planning and Development Advisory Committee hereby adjourn at 8:26 p.m.
Yeah, first, second, all in favor? Two.